Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is the Aspen City Council work session for August 12th, 2024. Tonight on our agenda, we have one item and one item only. This is the new Castle Creek Bridge / entrance to Aspen / whatever else you want to call it. Thank you guys for being here. We do have sign-up sheets available out in the hall still. So if you haven't signed up and you want to make public comment tonight, hopefully all of you know that we are limiting public. Everybody. Hello? Thank you for joining us.
If you have an electronic device in the room, please, and you're on the Zoom, you need to please mute it for both audio and for the microphone. Thank you. That'll stop the reverberation in the room so everyone can hear.
Okay, so there's the sign-up sheet still available for you right out in the hall. We are trying to limit that, so we are asking for just 2 minutes of comments. I've been equipped with a timer for this evening, so I will be trying to cut you off at 2 minutes. Hopefully, if you can make all your points in 2 minutes, that is most effective. If you can't, you're always welcome to send us emails and the like, and talk to us outside of the meeting as well. But we're going to keep it moving this evening. Just so you know, tonight we have a little bit of presentation still from our consultants, so a little bit more information yet to come to us and some discussion. Council to get an opportunity to ask any clarifying questions, get anything else out on the table. Then we're going to open it up for the public comment portion, and then we'll bring it back to council for more discussion. We are putting an item on our agenda for tomorrow evening's regularly scheduled meeting to have an action item to allow the follow-up and the opportunity for council members to forward any direction to our staff outside of this meeting. As many of you know, work sessions are opportunities for us to get information and have a robust discussion, but really council direction needs to come from this table in a regular meeting as we move towards some sort of resolutions. Let's see. Other than that, why don't we go ahead and get started? Pete.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor and Council. So like you said, this is a continuation of the work session that we had last week on the bridge and the entry. Quick introduction of the team from Jacobs. You got Peter Cozy, Terry Parch, Doug Stremmel, Jim Clark. And from the project management team on the staff side, we've got Carly McGowan, Lynn Rumbaugh, Jen Newton, Pete Rice, myself. And then with contributions from Bill Lynn and Jake Anderson on a specific piece of this one. With that, tonight we're going to be looking at more in depth of the traffic modeling, the economic impact analysis, funding assessment, and some of the follow-up questions that you had last week that we have answers for this week for you. At that point, we'll have the next step section. And as we move into the traffic modeling, I would like to just kind of be aware that we did model specific scenarios that were directed by council for 3 scenarios. With traffic models, there you can combine pieces and go through pieces and add pieces, but this is to give you a broad sense of what an SEIS would like, a supplemental environmental impact statement, how they would measure up with the 3 that you've directed us so far. A traffic model, you can go down the wormhole and really get into every scenario. That's really what's done through a supplemental EIS. Keep in mind when you look at these traffic models that in the past, the community values have been based to really not rely on free flow traffic. And so when you make these comparisons between the 3, keep in mind that the values in the past have wanted to exponentially grow transit options so that you were less reliant on vehicle usage. And so when you see these timings and all the discussions, keep in mind that that plays a role in all this, is maintaining a limit of traffic into and out of Aspen for environmental reasons, for community value reasons, and because, you know, we have a limited amount of space. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Peter and he's going to go through his modeling that we did for the 3 specific cases.
Thanks, Pete. So a traffic model was built for the purpose of understanding existing roadway conditions as well as testing and evaluating future options for this project. This model was focused along State Highway 82, the primary corridor in and out of Aspen, the northern limit being Brush Creek Road and the southern limit being 5th Street near downtown Aspen. It's important to note that both traffic and transit operations were the focus of future option evaluation here. Next slide. So starting with a review of existing conditions according to the traffic model, we'll first take a look at the outbound direction here, which peaks across several afternoon hours at its worst during summer months. Note that larger circles here in this graphic indicate pinch points with heavier congestion. So exiting downtown Aspen, going from right to left on this slide, the first primary bottleneck is a 1-lane merge after crossing 5th Street, which combines general traffic and buses into a single lane. This mixed traffic continues at a slow speed with several minutes of delay until hitting another 1-lane merge where the bus lane again begins slightly past the Maroon Creek roundabout. This 1-lane merge is the most critical outbound bottleneck due to the additional traffic demand originating from Cemetery Lane, Maroon Creek Road, and Castle Creek Road, all merging at the roundabout to leave Aspen. Next, shifting our focus to the inbound direction, this queuing occurs across several morning hours. As general traffic enters Aspen, the first and most constraining pinch point is located where general traffic merges into a 1-lane section near Harmony Lane in order to accommodate the inbound bus lane that begins around the airport. Inbound traffic and buses merge again at the roundabout and continue to move at a slow speed until going through 2 90-degree turns at the S-curve. This 1-lane merge near Harmony Road effectively meters traffic and allows buses to continue free flow through heavy queuing. If this bottleneck were to be alleviated, traffic queuing would worsen at downstream bottlenecks such as the roundabout and possibly downtown Aspen. In general, these bottlenecks you're looking at here prevent traffic congestion on the Aspen Street grid in the morning, but cause congestion in Aspen during the afternoon hours. To address some of the traffic and transit issues discussed, here are some options the team considered for testing in the traffic model. Option 1 begins at a relatively small scale with only S-curve improvements. Option 2 extends those improvements to provide an additional 3rd lane on Castle Creek Bridge. We look at 2 options here, A and B. Option 2A provides a bus queue jump at the Cemetery Lane signal going outbound, while option 2B provides a bus lane through Cemetery Lane as well as through Maroon Creek roundabout. Option 3 is the phase preferred alternative, or phase PA, as we'll refer to it. Option 4 is the split shot with S-curve improvements, and option 5 builds on the S-curve improvements in option 1 with an eye for down valley improvements in the northwest direction. So before we move on to each option, are there any questions specifically on the list of options considered here? Okay, can go to the next slide then. Option 1 primarily provides transit lanes through the S-curve as Highway 82 transitions from Hallam Street to 7th Street to Main Street. It also features slight modifications to 7th and 8th Street access to and from Highway 82 to help alleviate some of the friction through the S-curve for general traffic and buses. Next slide. Option 2 builds on option 1's transit lanes through the S-curve and extends the bus lane in the outbound direction. Option 2A extends bus improvements to Cemetery Lane, while option 2B extends bus improvements through the roundabout with a bus bypass. Note that separating buses from general traffic also helps general traffic flow slightly better. Option 3 is the Phase PA, which removes several pinch points and adds transit lanes between 5th Street and the roundabout. The Phase PA also features a signal at 7th and Main Street, which is effectively a relocation of the signal at Cemetery Lane. Notice that the pinch points that the Phase PA removes are not the most critical and constraining bottlenecks, so general traffic conditions do not experience drastic improvement under the Phase PA as it's currently designed. However, there are strategies that could be explored to provide more traffic capacity for this option. Option 4, similar to the Phase PA, the split shot option removes bottlenecks in the inbound direction. Contrary to the Phase PA, it maintains connections to those existing bottlenecks for the outbound direction and softens the S-curve as well. Notice that roundabout queuing is worse under the split shot, but note that there are other solutions that could be explored to improve split shot operations. Option 5 considers down valley improvements to the northwest of the limits of options 1 through 4. The primary strategy considered here was to improve conditions in the outbound direction, primarily due to the impact that outbound traffic has on Aspen streets and community. This solution explored here was to convert 0.4 miles of dedicated bus lane to a general traffic lane in effort to continue 2 general traffic lanes further north of the roundabout to increase the outbound throughput of the Maroon Creek roundabout. It's important to note that this would require a supplemental EIS at the minimum. Next slide. To summarize traffic and transit performance of the options discussed, our team scored each option's effectiveness in addressing existing and future congestion issues. The scoring is on a scale of 1 to 5, with a score of 3 performing similar to the no build, a score of 1 to 2 performing worse than the no build, and a score of 4 to 5 performing better than the no build. So option 3 scored the highest due to the removal of existing bottlenecks in both inbound and outbound direction. Option 5 scored the next highest due to its effectiveness in reducing outbound traffic congestion, thus improving bus travel times as well. Option 2B scored the next highest, followed by option 2A, then option 1, and finally option 4. The split shot performed the worst due to its negative impact at the Maroon Creek roundabout. However, again, there are potential solutions available to investigate improved split shot operations. There are numerous variations to all of these options that can be considered to improve traffic and transit even further. This exercise was an initial look at roadway operations, and now that we have a traffic model available, future testing can be performed efficiently. If the council wishes to explore more variations, that can be done through a supplemental EIS.
Question there.
Thanks. This is helpful. Could you remind me, option 5, what's contemplated with the bridge in option 5? The existing Casco Creek Bridge.
So this would only include the S-curve improvements associated with option 1. It would still have a 2-lane bridge.
Maintained a 2-lane bridge. Thank you. And I believe you said that a supplemental EIS would be required in option 5. Could you help me understand why that's the case if we're keeping the status quo?
It would be due to the removal of that 0.4 miles of bus lane just beyond the roundabout.
Down valley of the roundabout.
Down valley.
Thank you.
John?
Can you tell us how long a supplemental EIS would take?
Well, I think it depends on the extent of analysis and how much public involvement might be required, but I think a good estimate might be between 1.5 to 2 years.
Thank you.
You can hold your questions till your comment time. Thank you so much. Get rid of-
Okay, we were asked to look at the economic impacts of three-lane bridge construction. We looked at two options, the three-lane shifted and the three-lane faster. And important to note is we only looked at the economic impacts of the construction phase. We didn't look at the long-term effects. And our approach, in short, involved characterizing the local and regional economies, conducting a business survey, assessing the travel delays and related costs, the benefits of construction spending, and modeling the economic impacts of construction. So we'll talk about each of those in turn. Starting with the business survey. Purpose of the survey was to get feedback from the business community and to help inform our economic model, which was an in-plan model. So we partnered with the Aspen Chamber. They were very helpful in helping us get out 100 surveys to business owners via email. City staff also helped by pounding the pavement and talking directly with businesses, reminding them to complete the surveys. And we got good responses. 42 businesses responded. So I'll just go through the high points of some of the results. The more complete survey results are summarized in an appendix to our economic memo. But just to hit the high points, in terms of the types of businesses that responded to the survey, highest was retail at over 32%, followed by the food industry at 15%. In terms of how often travel on the Castle Creek Bridge, 76% noted daily usage and 26% noted occasional. In terms of reliance on the traffic flow over the bridge to provide access to the customers, 72% of the businesses noted they were very reliant, 16% noted moderately reliant. In terms of the extent to which the existing congestion on the bridge or the entrance to Aspen affects their businesses, 45% noted it was a major effect. As far as how much bridge construction might affect their overall business revenues, 31% noted they felt it would be a major decrease in revenues, which was judged to be a 20% or more reduction in revenue. So we also looked at the estimated travel delays and what that meant in terms of user costs. So in terms of the delay, it's worth noting that both of the three-lane bridge options that we looked at would keep one lane open to traffic in each direction. But because of the so-called cone zone effect with traffic, often heavy traffic traveling through construction zones, and also based on our look at other similar construction projects in the area and related delays and conversations with staff, we estimated that delay to be during peak periods 5 minutes in each direction, and during off-peak only 20 seconds. So in the larger scheme of things, minor effects, and but when you take a look at that over the span of a 3 or 4 year construction period, those delays do add up. We used USDOT methods and values to monetize those travel delays. And the results you see here. So these are annual numbers, vehicle hours traveled. They would total over 185,000 vehicle hours traveled of delay. And when you monetize those, for both the 3 and 4 lane shifted alternatives, total values for the 3-lane faster equate to over about 14.7 million, whereas the 3-lane shifted is approximately 19.3 million. So the differences there really are the result of the difference between a 3 or 4 year construction project. So with the influx of construction spending, there would be a benefit to the regional economy, which we define to be Pitkin County. We inserted the project costs into our economic model. We had to make some assumptions about the extent to which those project costs would be spent within Pickens County, that includes Aspen, and we assume between 5 to 10%. Thinking in terms of, where the labor might come from, where the materials and the supplies might come from. And of those local expenditures, we assume 60% would be labor versus 40% for material supplies, et cetera. So totaling those in terms of annual benefit, we equated that to 20 to 30 full-time employees for the 3-lane faster, which would result in labor incomes between 1.3 million to 2.6, and for the 3-lane shifted, 10 to 20, and 0.84 million to 1.67. So lastly, we looked at the extent to which the construction activity might reduce the business activity. And, after some discussion and deliberation, we assumed between 2 to 5% reduction. This kind of shows the scale to which that extent of reduction would affect overall business activity focused on the tourism-related businesses. And that's tourism-related kind of in a broad sense. That includes real estate, accommodation, food industry, et cetera. So when we run it through our traffic model, we came up to reductions of full-time employees between 180 to 450, which are notable, and that equates to labor incomes between 11.1 million to 27.8 million. I will note that based on discussions with our economists, we felt that the reductions would probably be more the lower end, closer to the 2% than the 5%.
Question?
Jim, could you help me understand the sort of premise behind where that, apologies, could you help me understand the premise of the loss in tourism-related business? Is it as simple as like, well, the traffic's going to be bad, so there's going to be less opportunity for people to spend money, or is there some more nuance to it?
That's essentially it. And I think based on the discussions with our economists, we felt like a lot of those would be front-ended. In other words, once the construction started, the impacts would be greater, and then they'd smooth out over the duration of the construction period. But the thought is that just the existence of the construction project would maybe deter some folks from coming in.
Thanks.
Early on in discussions around bridge construction, there were different ideas that came about. There was, I forget what the name of it was, but rapid construction, accelerated construction. There was even some ideas that were talked about carbon fiber construction, pre-construction. Do you guys take into account any of that information or type of construction? And did you research those on our behalf?
We did, and Doug or Beth would be better able to answer that. But essentially, we felt, and we talked about this back in April at the April workshop, we felt like this bridge, because of its constrained, the constraints around the existing bridge construction, it was not a good candidate for a bridge slide or for accelerated bridge construction. ABC is the term. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and regarding the fiber materials, CDOT has not accepted those methods of construction, so that would take years before you could really get something moving in this state for that to happen. So it's really not here yet.
Okay. Thank you.
So lastly, this is just a summary slide of what I've just mentioned. Both bridge alternatives would result in an influx of spending, which would result in more jobs, more labor income. We do estimate that there would be an impact to the tourism and tourism-related businesses. And one thing I didn't mention is when you equate that to sales tax revenue loss, the reductions would equate to between 0.3 to 0.7 million dollars.
So this is a discussion of potential funding mechanisms for the bridge. Prior to my employment at Jacobs, I was the city engineer for the city of Glenwood Springs for 11 years. So I had the great experience of helping with the funding programs for Southbridge, as well as helping the city negotiate with CDOT for the Grand Avenue Bridge construction. So a lot of interesting discussions, but so there are a lot of federal programs that are available for the entrance to Aspen. We just highlighted a few of them here, so you guys were aware of them. But the Protect Fund is one that focuses on community resilience to natural disasters and climate change. We did look at that for Southbridge, but it applies to existing facilities only, and really focuses on things like evacuation routes, which I think we could make a strong case for. Another is the Bridge Investment Program. Obviously, poorly rated bridges in the United States, important poorly rated bridges. Also, the Rebuilding America's Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, also called RAISE. This was a grant program, or this is the grant program that Glenwood Springs was able to receive $49.6 million for. All of the federal programs do require and focus on some of the federal goals, which are climate change, helping with climate change, sustainability, social equity. They also like to see that the projects are applied to a region, really improve conditions for transportation across the regional area. The other thing that really helped with our Southbridge application was our NEPA compliance. We had, together, Jim and I had spent 11 years really trying to bring the project to the close of the NEPA process. So in our grant applications, we were able to tell the federal agencies that we were complete. So it really helped rank the project better in terms of being shovel ready. The other thing that really helps with federal programs is political support. On the slide here, you can see Secretary Buttigieg and Senator Bennett and Jonathan Godis, our mayor at the time. The city did spend quite a bit of time, 2 delegations to Washington, D.C., and I personally did 4 or 5 presentations to our senators and our senators' staff advocating for the project. So that kind of political effort is really required to make these federal applications go through. Next slide, please. There are a number of state funding sources. You know, one of the ones that's been talked extensively about is the Colorado Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise for this project. Obviously, you know, the bridge and the entrance to Aspen is on a state highway, so you know, that consideration is important. But there is quite a process that goes with the CBTE funds. Both CDOT and the CBTEA group, which I believe are the State Transportation Commission, evaluate not only the structure of the bridge and its condition, but also the importance to the State Transportation Commission, or State Transportation Network. So a couple of different evaluations, and then of course competition against all of the bridges in the state. Other local sources are obviously the EOTC, whose mission was to help with the entrance to Aspen. The city of Glenwood Springs was also able to successfully pass a tax measure in 2016. In that tax measure, they said Southbridge was one of those projects, but there were 3 or 4 other projects that were listed in that group. And we were able to use that tax money and that bonding capacity to really stretch across 4 or 5 really large projects in the Glenwood Springs area. So it is an important element of potentially federal funding or state funding. So in conclusion, federal and state funding is the easiest way to fund and offset the cost of a large project. Alternatives that have regional benefit and improve social equity will be the most competitive. Even if the city had all of the funding today, a NEPA process is still required regardless of the funding source. Completion of the NEPA process will really help in obtaining the federal dollar grant sources. And depending on the condition of the bridge, Colorado Bridge Enterprise funding would be uncertain. And any funding that was allocated would design and construct the preferred alternative. Local funding through a tax measure or through other agencies can really help with the local grant match requirements. Do you guys have any questions about funding?
Well, yes.
Actually, you've already answered my question.
Bill?
Thanks. I think it's called a categorical exclusion. Is that the correct term?
It is, yeah.
Is a categorical exclusion, would that fall under completion of the NEPA process?
Well, a categorical exclusion, what that means is that project is categorically excluded by definition from NEPA. And, you know, based on what we heard from CDOT and FHWA and their response letter from last month that we talked about last week, they've indicated that because a ROD is in effect for this project, because NEPA's been completed, that that to change the PA and change the ROD would require a supplemental EIS at a minimum. So I think, you know, there has been discussion that the newspapers I know about a CADX maybe being done for a bridge replacement. I think I've heard different things. I think CDOT has maybe noted that maybe could be done with what's called a reevaluation. I think it's hard for me to see that based on what I've read and know that a CADX could be done for a 3-lane bridge replacement. You know, what CDOT's noted again is that a SEIS would be required at a minimum.
Okay, let me just make sure I'm crystal clear and everyone else is too. Whether it's a 3-lane bridge or a 2-lane bridge replacement, if categorical exclusion is granted, and I understand that's a maybe, not a definite, if that's granted, would that conclude the NEPA process and therefore unlock the funding that might be available to us?
Well, it's hard to say. I think what my interpretation of what CDOT and FHWA say, and I'm just interpreting, you know, I'm the messenger here, is that a CADX wouldn't be acceptable to do away with the PA because a ROD is in effect and a ROD covers the corridor. So to replace the bridge with, for example, a 3-lane bridge, you would have to do a SEIS at a minimum, and I don't think they would accept a CADX. If they did, then, well, what they have said literally in their July letter is that to change that ROD, they would either have to withdraw it or there would have to be a NEPA process to change the ROD, and a CADX wouldn't get you there.
Okay, let me ask one more way. I understand what you said about the CADX. Let's assume that you did have to do the SEIS and you did the SEIS. Is that the completion of the NEPA process that would unlock the funding?
Yeah, what would follow the SEIS, it would either reaffirm the ROD that's in place or it would result in a revised ROD, and that would conclude the NEPA process that would unlock, or, you know, it would end your NEPA compliance, excuse me.
Thanks.
John?
How long would an amended ROD take?
A revised ROD, well, I'll provide my qualifier. It often depends on you know, what the scope of that, meaning how much analysis goes into it, how much public involvement. I think with a revised ROD, any way the city moves ahead, there's going to have to be a reevaluation, so that would be part of that. So what that means is we'd have to reevaluate and update all the conditions and impact assessments that were done during the last reevaluation, which was in 2007 thing. Thank you. I think a revised ROD would probably be anywhere from a year to 1.5 years, along with that reevaluation.
And would that be in addition to the EIS, or would they occur concurrently?
Well, so it would follow the SEIS. So if an SEIS is in place, you know, you had asked before about how long that would take. I believe I said 1.5 to 2 years. That includes the revised rod or reaffirming the existing rod. So I think if it's a situation where the rod is changed without a supplemental, that would be a shorter duration, and that would maybe be a year or so.
One more question. The preferred alternative as it stands, is it ready to go without having an amended ROD?
Correct. You would not have to revisit the rod. You would have to do a reevaluation. And that's exactly what was done back in 2007.
Okay, so we wouldn't have to redo it, or we would?
We would not have to affect the record of decision. The purpose of the reevaluation is just to affirm that the decision is valid.
Okay.
So back in 2007, there was a reevaluation, but that didn't alter or change the rod. So to answer your question, no, you wouldn't have to do a revised rod.
Got it. And the amount of time that would take?
For the reevaluation, about a year, I think.
About a year. Thanks.
Thank you.
On that computer, can you just switch over to panelists on that list for me? And can you switch it back to attendees? He's not there. Bless you. Oh, there he is. Okay, thank you. All right.
You gotta promote him to panelist. Is that right? You gotta promote him to panelist?
No, I just needed to make sure I could see him. He'd pop up anyway with his hand raised, but I just want to make sure that I got him. No, he's there, or he was.
We will continue to watch for him and take care of that.
Is he up
to
there?
make sure he stays a panelist.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, Ward, I've got a hand up from you. Go right ahead. Ward, if you can hear me, you muted yourself. I had a hand up from you.
I've been having connectivity issues in and out, so I'm a panelist now, but I've had to reboot and reconnect a number of times.
Okay. Do you have any questions or comments at this point?
No, I think the questions I need answering have been answered.
Great.
Been answered.
Okay.
Okay. These next few, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go right ahead. Any further follow-up?
Yeah, these next slides just relate to constant questions we got from last week's meeting.
So I know there's a lot of questions about the PA footprint, and as we know it in the ROD, the PA itself is between the roundabout and 7th is one lane, one general traffic lane in each direction with a light rail component, okay? But, and the ROD may seem a little questionable about where did these buses come from, but we're gonna take a look at where the buses came from. And they had the foresight to plan for this. They knew that maybe LRT was gonna be a challenge to build from a cost standpoint. So they put in the ROD on page 1. The transit component includes an LRT system that if local support and/or funding are not available, will be developed initially as exclusive bus lanes. So again, one of the criteria that we talked about last week was moving more people, right? And a good transit system does that, whether it's LRT or buses. Again, on page 1, it said the transit platform is of adequate width to allow the exclusive bus lanes to continue in operation during the construction of the LRT. And see the note in table 1. We'll take a look at table 1. But I also want to point out, in the screening criteria itself, what advanced past the comparative screening was the 2 highway lanes plus 2 dedicated vehicle/transit lanes. So those were specifically for the transit lanes. So that advanced and was later just replaced with an LRT. So if we took a look at table 1, this is key on the platform widths, all right? And I want to reiterate that all these platform widths are maximum widths, okay? So it says 93.5 feet from from Maroon Creek to 7th, basically from the roundabout to 7th. That's including a light rail component. 78.5 foot for cut and cover tunnel. They wanted a little extra width in there for an emergency walkway if an LRT system was built and brought through that cut and cover tunnel. And then 73 feet for the Castle Creek Bridge. So again, I highlighted kind of those dimensions on table 1, and it also notes down the bottom there that for the phasing of the LRT, that you can use the bus lanes are provided so that we can adequately build that LRT. So there was always a plan to allow for buses to be phased. Next slide, please. I want to also say that those, we took a look at those platform widths and we narrowed them up for the phased PA that we presented to you last Monday. So for that roadway component that I mentioned was 93.5, we've narrowed that up to 75 feet, okay, for what the phased PA width for the roadway. But we kept that 78.5 foot, and we would keep the 73 foot for the Castle Creek Bridge that's not shown on this figure right here. This is consistent with phasing the buses in the ROD. It's also consistent with the July 10th letter that CDOT provided with FHWA's concurrence that we can narrow this up. Now, you might ask the question, well, what's this going to look like if we do build an LRT system? Are we going to wind up with all this extra pavement? Well, no, we would come back in there and probably make a wider median and maybe even slice off some of the pavement on the outside edge and bring it in a little bit and restore that back to more open space. So just kind of walked you through that, but we feel like they left enough interpretation in the ROD to help phase this, but the maximum widths help that, and we can narrow that up some. Next slide. So we also wanted to talk about, we brought some project costs and durations, and there's been a lot of questions about duration, maybe how long NEPA would take, and we're going to take a look at this table right here. So we've pulled together the costs, and again, these are all conceptual and timelines are approximate. So the first 4 rows address costs, and then the bottom rows address timeline. So with the phase PA, we have a higher construction cost with the construction items, $71 million versus maybe $54.5 million for the 3-lane bridge with bus bypass and the S-curve improvements. That includes the S-curve improvements as well. We have line items for design, NEPA, construction engineering and indirects, as well as PI during construction. That's fairly consistent, under $30 million across the board. Right-of-ways and temporary construction easements, this is where it kind of tilts a little bit. Phase PA, you have most of the right-of-way there for the across Merle Thomas. We talked about the Berger property last week. For the split shot, we would also need the Berger property. For the 3-lane bridge, we would need the S-curve properties as well as the property under the bridge. And then there's also some property along the golf course, which we'd probably handle that a different way through some mitigations through the golf course. But overall, the project costs, $147 million, $134 million, $145 million. And if we took a look at time frames, this is where it's kind of a big difference, is because the phased PA, you already have this ROD. Jim just hit on it. It's probably going to take a year to do that reevaluation, and that's what we have in here. And final design right away, another 1.5 to 2 years. So all in all, construction is even going to be quicker because they're going to work offline, as opposed to on the 3-lane bridge, you're going to be working right there at the bridge, right? So that's 4 years construction versus 2 years construction. So we're ranging our project timeline from 4.5 to 5.5 years for the phase PA, all the way up to 8.5 to 10.5 years for the 3-lane bridge. You notice there was a long, Terry hit on, Southbridge has taken a long time. And some of these can take time, but if you have something in place, that can help accelerate it. I want to note these are $2024. It does include that property take below the bridge for the 3-lane option. And this does not account for any potential time that might be needed for legal actions.
I think everybody was already giggling about footnote number C, footnote letter C there. Bill, question?
Well, first of all, thanks for this chart. Super helpful. This knocked 2 of my questions off, but it brought up another question, and I think this one maybe is best directed to Pete to start, which is, I had a number of 400 million in my head for the PA. I think that came from pretty early conversations with you. This is a drastically different number. Am I imagining 400? Where did that come from? You know, I can't recall the exact presentation materials, but.
Yeah, so that was done in the 2000 estimate before they got, like, we got it to a level where you could really start to break out materials and labor and stuff like that. These were very early models, and that included light rail. The other number was 200, and I think it was 186 to 200 was for the preferred alternative. And so there's some other pieces there that were presented without as much information as they've been able to gather. And these are estimates without, you got to remember in construction, you got to get past a path of like 15 to 20% to really dial in the costs, but these are here just for you to evaluate with a pretty high level on it. Does that help answer that?
I think so. I'm still.
Well, so some of those estimates, in that magnitude were inclusive of the, light rail.
I don't recall it.
And I think all the way to,
Basalt.
or Brush Creek even.
And that was in 2000, that was teen dollars, so that's a lot different value. And so we've always been nervous about using those numbers now after COVID because we all know that construction exponentially did increase, but those were safe numbers at that time for light rail. So I was close.
I guess I remain pretty uneasy about that delta between, and I don't remember light rail being a component of the 400 million. I don't think 400 million does a light rail to Basalt, just the light rail piece. So, well,
Per our website, we with a light rail, the capital cost would be 428 to 527 million with an operation and maintenance budget of 6 million annually. The light rail would run from the airport to Ruby Park.
Airport in.
those are some disparate answers I'm getting, but I think that answers my question for now. Thank you.
Thanks. Other question? Good. Sure.
This sort of goes back to Bill's point about the NEPA process and the categorical exclusion. Can you not do a 3-lane shifted bridge or a bridge in the current spot through a categorical exclusion because you're not affecting the record decision, but you're just leaving the record decision for a potential later date?
Well, there's two things. You know, there's been some talk in the paper about a CADX being possible if you keep it within the existing right-of-way. And we determined, and we talked about this back in April, that with the 3-lane, you can't keep it within existing right-of-way. So that would take away the ability to do a CADX under that requirement. Again, I'll go back to what I mentioned before. What my interpretation of CDOT's letter from last year is that a 3-lane bridge, because it is a change to the ROD in the PA, would require supplemental EIS at a minimum. You know, we asked specifically, that July letter that we got last year, or last month rather, from CDOT and FHWA, if you'll recall, and we talked about this last month, was based on specific questions that city staff sent to CDOT and FHWA back in May, and we asked whether or not replacing the existing 2-lane bridge with a 3-lane bridge could be done with the question we posed with a revised ROD. And the question we got back, they didn't hit it head on, but what they said was supplemental EIS at a minimum. So that's my take.
Yeah, I thought they gave pretty laissez-faire answers, and obviously we have a group that hired a lawyer from DC, Bill Eubanks, and he thought something completely different, and obviously that's a hired lawyer, but still the logic makes sense to me to be able to replace a bridge with a bridge pretty close in the right-of-way and not have to go through such a lengthy process.
Yeah, I think, you know, I did look at what Mr. Eubanks put together, and yeah, I think where he ended up was a CADX at a minimum. It might require an EA. You know, in our what CDOT's been very clear about is that there is an existing ROD in place, and to change it would require either a supplemental or a brand-new EIS to change that record of decision. So there's different interpretations, I get that. I know that, as I mentioned last week, when we talked about that July letter, that letter from last month, what I do know is that CDOT council was involved in drafting the responses to the city's questions, as was FHWA. So they have their own attorneys. Other attorneys from DC have weighed in. It's hard for me to make judgments based on that.
Yeah, it's muddied, and that's why I take even this information with a grain of salt as far as how long it would take. It feels like no one knows almost anything for certain until we do something, is the feeling I get.
Yeah, I think the one distinction is that in this case, you know, when the city chooses a course of action, we're going to go to CDOT and we're going to go to FHWA Colorado Division, and they'll make the determination.
And I wouldn't be surprised if it's a different answer and a different chart than what's up there, so but thank you very much.
Thanks. Questions? More information or presentation?
I had one quick question. If
Go
you
right
could
ahead.
back up to that last slide. So if I'm reading this correctly, the soonest we could start on the 3-lane bridge would be 4.5 years from now, give or take.
Yeah, with the NEPA duration, as mentioned, for an SEIS, I'm estimating, spitballing, 1.5 to 2 years. The 2.5-year estimate there is in the event of a new EIS, which, as we know from the CDOT responses, is a possibility. And I think the additional right-of-way duration is just due to the number of properties and the amount of right-of-way relative to the other options.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm here with our final update from the previous work session, and I'm going to give you a brief update from the ongoing emergency evacuation planning effort that's been ongoing this year. Over the last year, the Transportation and Special Events Departments have been working closely with the emergency responders, like Pete said, Aspen Police Department, Aspen Fire, as well as the Sheriff's Office have been involved in this effort. And through this effort, we've developed an evacuation model using an AI technology called LADRIS. It's a program specifically designed for city emergency egress scenarios. It, like I mentioned, includes AI technology, real-time traffic data, as well as very localized population data. So I've included a screen grab from what that model looks like online. The model, under a peak summer day, shows an evacuation time of over 15 hours. Further, you know, our emergency services have been developing the emergency plans that go along with this. So that's kind of the transportation side of that. That does include 2 lanes outbound over the Castle Creek Bridge and 1 lane outbound over Power Plant Road, using the inbound lane of Power Plant Road as the emergency access into town. You can go to the next slide.
Bill?
Thanks, Carly. Did you model the evacuation time frame under the other scenarios, preferred alternative, 3-lane, et cetera?
We have not. We've been using this as a tool for the existing conditions and existing evacuations. The scenario has been kind of scrutinized and pieced together with input based really solely from the emergency responders.
Thanks. I have no data to back this theory that I have, but I wanted to see if you think it's reasonably accurate or not. Because of the downstream or down valley bottlenecks, I believe that the vehicular evacuation times post preferred alternative implementation would not be that different from what you just shared. Is that an accurate theory or reasonably accurate theory?
I would not assume that. And I'm going to jump in there because there are things that will be done at those other locations to address traffic. And additionally, you're going to potentially end up starting with 3 lanes with the use of the median in that area. So I would not make that assumption. I don't think if we modeled it that we would come to that conclusion. I think the nuance is going to be how we use the roundabout in those scenarios. And that is whether we use both sides of the roundabouts to go down valley and we not allow any upcoming valley traffic. That's a very extreme scenario that requires pretty intense traffic control to utilize and then create a merge point back on to the down valley side, closer, I should say closer, further away, closer to like the Snowmass Brush Creek intersection. So there's a lot of things in emergency situations where our law enforcement partners will take over assets and use them very differently than what we use day to day. And they would have full control and ability to do that if they felt that was most appropriate.
Thank you. I believe this is accurate, please confirm. The current recommendations from the city of Aspen, at least in the event of a wildfire, are to forget about your car, go to places like the golf course and Meroldt and stay there. Is that right?
I would not say the city of Aspen is making recommendations. We're going to rely on the incident commander of the situation because we are not experts in fire behavior, determine what might be best. And so those are certainly potential alternatives, but I'm not comfortable providing that instruction on behalf of the community. I would really rely on the incident commander determining it based on wildfire behavior.
Fair enough. Do we know what the incident commander's current recommendation is?
An incident commander is identified at the time of the incident based upon their training, which is a pretty sophisticated level of training and understanding of fire behavior. That generally is not someone who's employed in this county.
Got it. Who writes the emergency evacuation plan?
So we prepare plans in the absence of there being, we prepare potential plans, right? It depends, is the fire coming down the Castle Creek Valley or is it coming across Independence Pass or Hunter Creek? So we plan some base scenarios that help us understand where our biggest problem areas or pinch points would be for consideration of deployment of what will be limited resources in that situation and the incident commander having to prioritize where those resources go.
Is it feasible that one of the primary recommendations or solutions in the event of a wildfire is to go to places like the golf course?
Maybe. I don't know if I'll have a working sprinkler system there. So you remember during a wildfire, we have a lack of water storage in this community when everyone turns on their lawn sprinklers to try to protect their structure. We will drain Thomas Reservoir faster. And it will not be available, because the system is not designed for firefighting purposes. The community has made a conscious choice to use water storage and snowpack over reservoirs. So I would anticipate our municipal water system will be drained rather quickly in that type of scenario from people who are on a municipal system turning on their outdoor sprinkler systems throughout the community.
That's helpful. What I'm ultimately trying to get at is, does our situation meaningfully change with the implementation of the preferred alternative versus a different solution? Do our options, does our resiliency, does our ability to evacuate vehicles, does any of that really change meaningfully?
My experience tells me yes, but if you would like us to model it, we'd like that direction from you because I would like some additional resources to do that beyond the current resources that we're doing it with.
Okay, so last question here is the assertion that has been made by people in the community that the preferred alternative is definitively better for evacuation purposes a fair assertion to make at this point in time?
At that point, if the preferred alternative is written, I now have the potential to use up to 4 lanes on one bridge and at least 2 lanes on another bridge and potentially PowerPoint Road. I compare that capacity to the capacity today and I see a dramatic increase.
But at the roundabout, we would still have the same capacity. So it's,
Well, again, it's how you use the roundabout, because you can have 4 lanes of excuse me, I'm going to ask, we maintain decorum in the room. It's really hard for everyone to hear when there's a lot of chatter in the audience, and I just want you all to have the opportunity to hear each other as well as the council. Thank you.
It'd be situational, you know?
Right.
Obviously situational.
and the use of the down valley lanes doesn't change from one solution here or the other, so. You'd still have 4 lanes from the roundabout down valley, no matter what we do at the entrance.
Well, and after the roundabout, though, you expand back out to 6.
Right, but
Because you
again,
can
none of that's proposed to change here, so.
No, you know, and I think sometimes what's lost, we answered the direct question of emergency egress, but I also look at the availability of emergency services to get in and out of the community, not just during a wildfire scenario, but an ambulance trying to get in and out of here. You know, we all the time have the unfortunate situation of people experiencing very traumatic injury or health calls. And so capacity really addresses allowing those services to be able to move more quickly through the community. So I don't want that to be put aside, that we're talking about only a fire or evacuation scenario. There's a lot of other scenarios that capacity is really important for the well-being of the community.
Thank you.
Ward, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I think searching for a reason why the preferred alternative does not, or a scenario under where the preferred alternative does not increase the wildfire evacuation of Aspen is, I think it's a failed attempt. When you see 4 lanes on the preferred alternative plus 2 lanes on the Castle Creek Bridge, that's better than 2 lanes on the Castle Creek Bridge. You know, their incident commanders are going to make decisions. You can't predict what they're going to do, but they are well trained to handle the situation. So I just think that it is searching for a reason why the preferred alternative does not increase the evacuation of Aspen, I think is, sorry, Bill, a foolish exercise.
Thanks.
Called me worse before.
Other council comments, questions? Thank you. Not this time? Pete, any final words for you?
No, thank you for, before public comment. I think we're all good.
All right, thank you so much. John?
Yeah, I wanted to say a quick comment about evacuation routes while we're talking about them. That isn't the primary reason why we're here, but I will say I attended a Colorado Municipal League conference in Loveland, Colorado recently. They've got a fire still burning down there right now. The presentation was given by Estes Park Volunteer Fire Department. They've dealt with 4 evacuations in the last 6 years. I'm not doing this to alarm anybody. I just want the public to be educated. But when I asked them how long it took to evacuate Estes Park, they told me 5 hours, but they wanted to get it lower. They asked me what my estimate was, and the number that we had been given at that time was 17 hours. Their response was, that is unacceptable. And in my mind, I don't want Aspen associated with the word unacceptable. That's all I have to say about that.
All right. We are going to start our public comment. I want to remind everybody that we are limiting you to 2 minutes. This is an opportunity for you to share any questions that you have, share your input, share your perspective. But we are limiting it to 2 minutes. This is not a public hearing. As I said earlier, right now we have scheduled time tomorrow for us to reconvene on this issue so that we can talk about next steps and direction for more information or for different plans and procedures. So again, this is an opportunity just for you to weigh in. Please, if you have any questions, let's get those out so that we can make sure that we get those answered as soon as we can. We have got about 30-odd signups here. So we'll start. I'm doing this in no order in particular, and I feel free to move around this list as I see fit. So I'll give you the first three that are going to be speaking to us tonight. We're going to have George Raptis. If you're here, come on up to the microphone. We're going to have Warren Klug second and Jennifer Williams third. So please be ready with your comments.
Thanks, Matt.
And please, when I ask you or give you a 2-minute warning, please wrap your comments at that time.
Are we on? Is that on? Hi there. This is just a comment. My name's George Raptis. I live at 814 West Bleecker, which is the villas that are on the 8th Street bus stop. The current road is outside my living room. Based on what I've heard tonight, it's safe to say this meeting has not gone well for those who oppose the straight shot. Right, there's been a number of reasons that have been given in favour of the straight shot. Sorry, is that on or not? Yeah, sorry. First comment. I don't think this meeting's gone very well for those that oppose the straight. Say that? Closer to the microphone. Can I start my time again? Is that all right? Sorry. I don't think this meeting's.
It doesn't affect the room, so if you want to sit on one of those chairs, I think it might be louder. Is my best. I'm sorry. Thank you.
No, thank you. I can't hear.
Make sure your microphone's on green there, please.
Great. Can everyone hear now? I'll start my time again. I live on 814 West Bleecker on the 8th Street bus stop. The current road is on my living room. From what I've heard today, there haven't been a number of compelling reasons to do anything but the straight shot. I was formerly an infrastructure attorney. I built major projects. I built toll roads. I built power stations. I built light rail projects. I've lived in a country where we had a bushfire, where people were given 6 hours to evacuate. The fire hit them in 2 hours and killed 250 people. These are very, very serious issues that, in my opinion, and based on what I've heard, are very clear cut. And right now, all I can see is a discussion going on that says, should we keep Maralt green or should we build a road through it? Because this is a values-based decision that's being put if the council does not follow the advice of its staff. There have been a number of compelling reasons that I saw today that a straight shot will be the same price as a 3-lane bridge, take half the time and improve the traffic situation and improve fire evacuation situation. So if council votes against this, this is a values-based judgment based on green space versus not. I don't want more lanes in my living room. I have every right to say that. But I implore you to make a decision to build the road for the future, not the road for the past. Thank you.
Thanks. George, would you clarify once again, where do you live?
I live at 814 Bleecker,
Thank you.
which is the Aspen Villas. Thanks.
Warren Klug,
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Jennifer Williams, and then Dee Matthews will be after Jennifer.
My name is Warren Klug, 32-year resident of Aspen, and we live in the same townhouse complex as George does, right there on the corner, 7th and Highway 82. I also would like to make sure that we don't have cars and buses driving through our living room when all this is done, because it looks like that is an option where things really get tight on the S-curves. You'll hear all kinds of arguments and opinions tonight, of course, and I appreciate that. And transportation will be the big focus. But I do ask you to please remember that people live there in that area, and that there are personal impacts that will be significant based on the decision that you make. And like many others in the room who live in that same neighborhood and the same area, the whole issue has a potential to drop the value of our homes and the livability of our homes in a significant way. So I would like to see a major outreach effort on the part of the council and the staff in the neighborhood. We haven't seen that yet. I understand that you have to make the decision of when it's right to do that. But I think there needs to be some good local meetings so we have a better idea of the folks who live there and will be impacted. The final choice, of course, needs to look at the things, as George mentioned, that include safety, obviously, cost, and timing to have it done. So my comment is, please work with the neighbors and talk about these issues and make sure that we have an opportunity to be heard and considered. Thank you.
Thank you. And for clarification, again, you live in the villas?
Yes, no, not the villas, that's
Not the
next
villas.
door. We're in the West Bleecker townhouse project, and if you're coming from down valley, you come into town, the first S-curve, the first right-hand turn, kind of right across from the Forest Service building, that's where our property is. And there are 26 units in our complex townhouses. So we're right across, or we're right there on the S-curve, and we'll be impacted
S-curve.
as that's widened.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Williams, then Dee Matthews, and then John Siebold. Do we have Jennifer Williams with us still? Okay. Dee, are you here? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dee Matthews, resident of Aspen. Thank you for allowing public comment. I've been coming to Aspen since 1972 and have owned my home for over 25 years. There's unity, I believe, in the recognition that Aspen must have a safe bridge today, next week, next year, and always. A bridge over Castle Creek is part of every plan that you have studied. It is necessary. For example, if you favor the split shot, you need a new bridge to hold the bus and truck traffic leaving town. The present bridge will not suffice. If you favor the preferred alternative, that plan is years away from construction, if at all, and given the uncertainties and the lack of public support. You need a bridge to bridge the gap in time until any project can start. Without a bridge, Aspen is isolated. Safety concerns and the risk of weight restrictions or failure are unacceptable, as John Doyle correctly pointed out last week. I can safely assume that no one in this room is willing to take the risk of waiting too long and then dealing with the consequences of failure. The stakes are simply too high for that. Please consider the poor state of the bridge today. Also consider the need for a bridge in its current location in all cases and the uncertain timelines of any other proposal, and compare all of that with the risks of waiting. There's only one conclusion. Please move forward immediately with the replacement of the current Castle Creek Bridge. Thank you.
Dee, can I ask you a question? Do you have a comment or input around whether that is a replacement of the existing 2-lane bridge or if that it would be expanded to a 3-lane bridge?
I would prefer the 3-lane bridge, but we'll go along with the 2-lane bridge. It's got to be replaced.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
John, then David Smith, and Jeff Grinspoon will be next.
Hi, I'm John Seibold. Thanks very much for all that hard work and thinking that's gone into this process so far and the plans on the table. I live just off Cemetery Lane on Mountain View Drive, and I'd like to point out that under the current PA design, traffic from Cemetery Lane, which currently can turn right at the top of Cemetery Lane to head to Down Valley destinations, under the preferred alternative will get routed back into the west end, and will encounter a bottleneck at the 7th Street and Main Street intersection, which is going to become the bottleneck of all bottlenecks. All Cemetery Lane traffic will now have to pass through that intersection in both directions, going either, coming from Down Valley or going Down Valley. If you think Aspen traffic is bad now, just wait until we add another 20% of cars going through that new bottleneck that will be introduced. It's going to be a nightmare. It will be Carmageddon. I'd like to just make a couple other points. Under the preferred alternative, the existing Castle Creek Bridge has to stay in operation. I do not understand how we can spend $71 million, get the new expressway cut through the Merle open space, and replace the Castle Creek Bridge, which has to be replaced. I just don't understand where that $71 million number came from. That's totally unrealistic. I mean, we at least have to reconstruct the Castle Creek Bridge and build all this other stuff. There's no way that's going to be done with $70 million. And finally, on the topic of evacuation, has anybody considered the fact that we have a railroad grade on the Rio Grande Trail? And we could do some engineering on that, make that at least 1 lane and possibly 2 lanes that could be used in an emergency situation for outbound evacuation from Aspen. completely bypassing all of the bridges and jumping traffic out onto McLean Flats Road. Thanks.
Sarah, do you mind sharing a word about that? You know, people talk all the time about Rio Grande Trail as an evacuation route. My understanding is that it, definitely under current conditions, it is not something that would be recommended for evacuation. There's too much problem with potential there. So
I was just looking to see if Assistant Chief Anderson is still here, because he has been intimately involved in looking at that. He was here. He left? Okay, thank you. So Pete and I will tag team this. So there you go. I thought if I said his name and talked enough, he might show up.
Good.
hey, Jake. Oh,
Oh, there's Bill. So
Jake. Hey.
Chief Anderson, and we're going to ask you to use one of the sit-down mics, please. The specific question was about utilizing Rio Grande Trail as an evacuation route, and you know this one intimately, so I thought perhaps you would be best to answer that question for the audience and the mayor.
Can I just clarify my question to say that I'm not assuming under current conditions, but with some engineering work, that it could be, flat and straightened, right? It's a railroad grade after all.
Understood. Just a brief answer, because this comes up every once in a while. It's the same as using Independence Pass. It's just not a route that you would send people to for evacuation, but will you speak to the Rio Grande Trail, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't speak to what it would look like with improvements or if those are possible. I would say that under its current state, you would not want to use that as an evacuation route in the event of a wildfire in most scenarios, right? I don't want to say never for anything, but you wouldn't want to move from a place of relative safety to a place of almost perfectly defined as unsafe, being mid-slope in a fuel bed with a high potential for being trapped there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thanks.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could just clarify too, that under the record of decision, CDOT is required to renovate the existing Castle Creek Bridge to a certain service level. So we haven't really focused on that because we know that that's a fait accompli of the record of decision right now. So I just want to be clear that CDOT is not going to allow the current bridge to fall into unusable status. They're required to bring that bridge up to a specific status through the record of decision, and then that bridge is turned over to the city of Aspen as what's called like a non-highway, non-system bridge that is locally owned and maintained from that point forward.
Thank you. Mr. David Smith.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
I hope as a part of your due diligence or curiosity that you all have driven under the current bridge onto Harbor Lane and parked at the end near Castle Creek. I think it gives you a really good perspective of the risks associated with any new bridge and the NEPA implications. The existing bridge is a known site, no surprises, and in one form or another has been in place for the last 100 years. Jacobs has a detailed proposal and cost summary to replace it today. It proposes to reduce the number of piers for a new bridge, thus enhancing the environmental quality of the project. There are no significant environmental risks and cost analysis can be tight. It qualifies for a categorical exclusion under the well-established NEPA practices. The other location where a new bridge is planned is quite different. There are large piles of toxic waste where nothing grows. The slag on the hillside is the remains of the Aspen smelting company operation from the early 20th century. The proposed new bridge would place a pier essentially on or very close to the toxic material. Have any samples ever been taken to determine the full extent of the toxic waste field? What consideration, if any, has been given to mitigation and protection of the creek? Has anyone thought of the cleanup cost and how that could cause further delays and overwhelm the project by additional cost increases? In the long list of assumptions that Jacob sets forth is the need to build a new construction road with switchbacks and 2 creek crossings to accommodate large equipment, another environmental issue to evaluate before proceeding. Any new bridge crossing Castle Creek in this vicinity faces a serious environmental challenge and a long review process, including a new full EIS. Faced with these two alternatives and known deterioration on the existing bridge, which would you choose? A well-defined and sensible proposal that can be built in less time, or a flawed concept which has potentially pull-the-plug environmental obstacles? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jeff Greenspoon, and. Sorry?
I'm going to pass it this time.
Okay. Alex Palmez. Alex? And Howard Tallenfeld, and then Kavanaugh O'Leary. Howard, are you here? Yep. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Howard Tallenfeld, 814 West Bleecker Street, Bleecker Townhomes that you've just heard about recently. I need to tell you that you've been saddled with a problem. It's a 25-year problem that's all of a sudden been thrust upon all of you to try to develop solutions to. And time is a critical issue. I also wanted to say, by the way, of background, I was the 15-year Planning and Zoning Board Chair for the City of Parkland. You might have heard of Douglas High School, just to give it some ideas to where. But unfortunately, we were also very close to a place called Champlain Towers. Champlain Towers was that building that collapsed on the Atlantic Ocean, where 98 people died. And unfortunately, the plans were sitting on the director's desk to fix it and to go do an assessment. And the problem in doing the assessment and the costs stopped them from getting it done. The building collapsed, these people perished. You have a chance not to be the board of directors of Champlain Towers by understanding that time is of the essence. Now, I've seen a number of studies, and folks have worked very, very hard. You've hired a professional engineering staff to give you some advice and I'm sure the advice is very, very good that you're getting, but you haven't given them the full opportunity to address all of the traffic problems. I want to say that because we've heard that there's lots of, restrictions in places that we have other options and alternatives to look at. But the bottom line is, when I look at the chart, the final summary chart that they have given you, it shows you that you have options of 4.5 years to 8.5 years or 8 years. That's just way too long. And you need to understand that time is of the essence to avoid tragedies by way of evacuation, by way of collapse, by way of other things. Fix that bridge, you got to do that, but you can't wait 8.5 years, and even 4 years is too long.
Thank you. Kavanaugh O'Leary. Kavanaugh, and then Alan Harvey, and then Neil Siegel, please.
I'm Kavanaugh O'Leary. I live at 1500 Silver King Drive off Cemetery. The Castle Creek Bridge is in urgent need of being rebuilt immediately. It cannot wait. You can be for the straight shot and still want the Castle Creek Bridge replaced now. The bridge is nearing a dangerous point, and we cannot wait until we get the almost $500 million required to build the straight shot and the years it will take to get voter approval, much less the years to settle the inevitable lawsuits arising from it going across open space. We need to replace the bridge now. The Castle Creek Bridge is falling apart literally before our eyes. Jacobs Engineering reports that the approximate $8 million rehabilitation work completed in 2018 may already need to be redone. Enough with these constant Band-Aid measures that cost millions of dollars and close the bridge for weeks at a time, only having to be redone. City Council should move aggressively to activate CDOT and design, fund, and build the new Castle Creek Bridge right where it is. Jacobs Engineering has presented the city with a plan to keep 2 lanes of traffic open across the existing bridge throughout the entire new bridge construction process. No detours, no lengthy delays, just minimal impact on traffic. In the end, we get a new 3-lane bridge that can serve our community for decades. Aspen can't afford to wait. The business and public safety consequences of a bridge failure here would be disastrous. Just look at Gunnison's struggle since the mid-April failure of the Blue Mesa Bridge on Highway 50, a bridge built 2 years after Castle Creek Bridge. Please, City Council, make the decision to rebuild the bridge now. Thank you.
Hope everybody noticed that he finished exactly on time.
That is tough for a lawyer.
Not for a model citizen, though. Let's see, we have Alan Harvey and then Neil Siegel, please.
Thanks, everyone. My name is Alan Harvey. I am a Carbondale resident, a former Board of Trustees member in Carbondale as well. I've been working with the folks, with Friends of Castle Creek, to advocate the three-lane bridge. I just wanted to kind of, you know, first of all, I've been in Marold my whole life. I still go to the Marold open space. It's still, it's our front yard. And I worry about putting a highway through it, the front yard, and turning it into a highway median. I think you know, I've been just thinking about how Glenwood, it just has a highway pouring through it. And Aspen will have a highway pouring through it. It'll just be directly onto Main Street. It creates a new light at 7th and Main. It's gonna cause all kinds of traffic troubles. Sam brought up, we don't know what's gonna cost and how long it's gonna take until we do something. I just wanna confirm that. I think, you know, when I was on the Board of Trustees in Carbondale, Highway 133, they came in saying it's gonna be 4 lanes. The community resisted, and it's 3 lanes. They said they weren't gonna put sidewalks kind of in a couple of different spots and use flashers, and the sidewalks and the flashers are there. It's okay to push back against state agencies. And I think, you know, that's even true in CDOT's insistence that there is no need for a vote. Well, Jim True has a different opinion. I think the city attorney's opinion probably prevails. So I think there's these opportunities to think about. And then just the impacts on that neighborhood along, you know, with all that affordable housing, is it the Bavarian? Anyway, it's the affordable housing on 8th Street, on Main Street between 7th and 8th. And, you know, that has really developed out in a different way. And it's gonna be very impactful to a neighborhood full of children and full of, you know, locals and people who aren't going to afford to fight you and take you to court. And so I think that's another thing to think about. And then as far as the costs go, you know, as a former elected official, I wouldn't believe 147 million gets you a tunnel, a new 5-lane bridge or 4.5-lane bridge across Castle Creek. And a highway. It just doesn't make any sense to me. 400-foot cut and cover tunnel through you know, soils that were part of a lixivation plant, you know, and probably have some things. So anyway, thank you very much for hearing me, and I wish you hope you go with the 3-lane shifted. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Hey, Alan, question. Less applause would be awesome. Hey, Alan, quick question for you. Yeah. Are you a paid consultant for the group, or are you volunteering?
I am a paid consultant.
Thank you. Neil Siegel and then Richard Finger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In 1998, the block of Main Street between 7th and 8th, where it ends, had the Roger Long House on the corner and 2 log cabins. That was it. Today, there's a vibrant community of affordable housing, 802 West Main, the Bavarian Complex. That area has changed completely, and I've lived nearby all the time. Your engineers recently surveyed the 4-lane expressway through that block, and they reported only on the loss of parking places along Main Street. Somehow, they missed the kids. They missed the bikes lined up, the basketball hoops set up on the curb. Where in this discussion is there any resident consideration in any of these studies? You know, parking places are not people. And when we evacuate people, not cars. Who's going to sit in a car for 15 hours to get out of town when, as the former mayor pointed out in an editorial this morning, they can hop on their bikes and ride out in 20 minutes or take their dogs for a stroll in an hour to the golf course. You know, it's the destruction of open space, the disregard for historic sites, the loss of small-town values, community and civic pride, neighborhood by neighborhood, and yes, obviously bad decisions on traffic flow, like taking away the right-hand turn from Cemetery Lane, that all add up. It all adds up. From the perspective of the people, there is nothing preferred about the preferred alternative. The costs associated with the straight shot are simply too high a risk to take when compared with the guesswork of saving a few seconds of commuting time 25 years from now. That's the guess, 25 years from now. And speaking of 25 years, it's 25 years after the completion of the preferred alternative that CDOT will return that bridge to us. Are we willing to wait that long?
That's 2 minutes, Neil.
Thank you. I'll wrap it up. The voters have consistently placed values over bike lanes, and they'll do it again. They want this bridge fixed and fixed now. Thank you.
Richard Finger, and then Ken Brown.
I'm in favor of the three-lane solution. First, the traffic flow will continue during construction with little interruption. Second, the bridge is crumbling and a new structure is needed immediately before complete failure causes catastrophe. Third, the enormous environmental impacts of destroying the Meralt Preserve will not be tolerated lightly by the environmental community. Four, it's a long, uncertain, cumbersome, and expensive process of ballot initiatives even to get the straight shot approved. Fifth, the straight shot is in some cases slower than the three-lane solution. Forcing a left turn at Cemetery Lane will have significant repercussions. It would put over 500 homes, probably over 1,500 people, much farther from Aspen Valley Hospital, severely compromising emergency health care access. This does not even include the Starwood residents. No study was done on how long the detour to 7th Street would take, and many cars will still use McLean Flats to Cemetery Lane for their down valley commute. I can easily envision traffic backed up from 7th Street Light to Cemetery Lane, further exacerbating the situation. If this occurs, the Power Plant Road detour will cause even worse congestion in the West End. When you combine the health care issues with resulting potential property devaluations, you create fertile ground for voter discontent. Lower property values will not only affect homeowners, but also cost the city of Aspen much needed revenue. Every thriving area suffers some traffic issues. The pinch points coming into Buttermilk and the roundabout cause the same delays no matter what course is taken. Passing the three-lane solution now guarantees the citizens of Aspen the cleanest, simplest solution to the Castle Creek issue. Let's build a new bridge today and revisit the straight shot after we can ensure Aspen's safe access to town before the bridge fails. Thank you.
Here, can I ask you a question, please? Are you a resident of the Villas?
No, I live at 1205 Red Butte.
Thank you.
Hello,
Ken Brown,
that's me.
then Ruth Kruger, and Halen Gonzalez Pita. Hope I'm saying that correctly.
My name is Ken Brown. My family has owned property in the Villas of Aspen for nearly 40 years. If built, the straight shot would run directly behind our condo and within a few yards of our deck. However, I honestly like to think that I would sacrifice our family's personal interest if there were really compelling reasons from a community perspective that the straight shot was a better alternative. I'd like to briefly make a couple of points today. First, on the traffic modeling that was done by Jacobs. I mean, the bottom line in all of that is that none of the alternatives that are being proposed will significantly improve the traffic. The only way to improve the traffic is to get people out of their cars. And need to think of congestion pricing options? Do we charge people more to park during the day in town? Is there some kind of a toll or a fee for people to commute in? But none of this is going to improve the congestion. And secondly, I just want to point out that I think it's really unfortunate that in the Jacobs modeling summary, where it says that from a traffic perspective, it's better to have the preferred alternative or the straight shot, that's really misleading. And that's in all the summary things. It's being promoted by the city all over the place. And I think it's just an unfair perspective of the facts that are going on. The cost estimates, just very briefly, we just saw for the first time a big summary of cost estimates. It's hard to comment on that. It's hard to believe that. I think everybody needs to take a look at that in great detail. It's a big, important part of this. And finally, I just want to point out my career has been working with local governments across the country for the last 30 years. Over the weekend, my wife was at the farmer's market talking to city folks about the project, city staff, and the only thing that was presented was and talked about and advocated for was the straight shot as a solution, rather than what I think is city staff's job really is to show the pros and cons of all of the alternatives. And in my 30 years of working with local governments, I've never seen a situation like that where a city staff has advocated on a really controversial project before the city council has come to a final decision. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Ruth Kruger, and then Halen. Did you have a question?
Hi, guys. Nice to see you again.
I was going to make a comment about that.
I just have a few questions. I'm not going to go over anything anybody else has ever said. I just want to know, what has been your outreach to the people most affected by this? I can tell you, none. I didn't even know you had a meeting last week. What is going to be your outreach in the future for those of us? I live on the corner of 8th and Main. I'm probably the most affected person on the route. Across from the burger, Neil mentioned the house I lived in since '94, the house they tore down to build the condo I live in now. I have been on that corner since 1994. I'm glad we're finally doing something about it because we need to. How about a little outreach to those of us that are affected? Thank you.
Thanks.
Halen.
I grew up under the bridge. It's a phrase I'm getting used to raised eyebrows from. The house my parents bought 38 years ago was a dream for my brother and I to grow up in. I certainly didn't realize the incredible opportunities this home afforded my family, but I appreciate it beyond measure now. We are lucky to have lived a life under Castle Creek Bridge. Plucking service berries, watching bears ramble by, witnessing fox kids grow up, attempting ball sports on the dirt road with the inevitable lost ball to Castle Creek River, bat watching, stargazing, snow days, remodels, birthdays, holidays, weddings, funerals. My dad walking to teach at Aspen High School for 33 years. My mom scooting into town to work at PCDG. They have both enjoyed their 50 years in Aspen, but especially their time under the bridge. It's hard for me to describe, in under 2 minutes, how I feel at the thought of my parents potentially losing their home with a 3-lane shifted option. Each home has its own stories, memories, and future dreams. It's not just private property. For those who think the straight shot would be an eyesore, I am sorry. For those concerned with Meroldt, I have always considered it my makeshift yard due to not having one. I would be sorry to see it changed. But I would be even more sorry if my parents lost their home of 38 years. If the data says that the 3-lane shifted is the superior choice, I understand. I would simply hate for my parents' lives to be uprooted for a solution that is based on personal interest rather than data from experts. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel Weinberger, Terry Paulson, and Mick Ireland. Daniel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Daniel Weinberger. I've been a resident of Aspen for 6 years. I am a physician, and when I'm confronted with a difficult, challenging clinical question, I sort of assess what the risks are and what the relative benefits of various interventions might be. This is very analogous to what I believe you are struggling with now. From my perspective, there is only one emergent risk, and the emergent risk is not fixing the Castle Creek Bridge. The bridge has to be fixed, no matter what you decide to do down the road. This is an emergency that needs to be addressed post-haste, because that patient is on the verge of collapse. I want to make a little comment about alternatives that have been talked about. This tendentiously referred to preferred alternative, the straight shot, has some benefits that we've heard about, but they're uncertain. To choose that therapy has an uncertain outcome because we don't actually know how much it will really affect traffic. It may reduce commuting times 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, but it leads to much more congestion in town on Main Street. There are dangers in this therapy, in this choice of therapy, that we don't fully understand. We've heard a lot from other speakers today about ecological dangers. There are ecological dangers, there are cost dangers, there are pedestrian dangers that no one's talked about. That 7th Street intersection is a potential nightmare. People are going to emerge from that tunnel, they're going to see that green light, and they're going to try to beat it. And people are going to enter Main Street at 40, 50 miles an hour. Some people will. There will be danger in this solution, aside from any of the ecological dangers, the dangers to wildlife, and also dangers to the zeitgeist of the Aspen small town spirit. So my final comment is, like in all decisions that physicians make faced with emergent problems, make a decision that is not under duress, that is not based on special interests, that has the best interests of all involved in prolonging the life of this city. Thank you very much for my 2 minutes of fame.
Thank you. Terry Paulson, then Mick Ireland. And is Jeff still here? Jeff Grinspoon, did he leave? Okay, just so everybody knows, I'm not going to allow anybody to, when comment is closed, to say, oh, I didn't sign up and I would like to comment last. It's not going to happen. So if you are interested in thinking that's your plan, you should let me know now. Terry, hi.
Good evening. My name's Terry Paulson. I live at Hunter Creek. I've been here 42 years. Having sat in your shoes for 12 years, I can appreciate what you're going through. But I have to tell you that I'm a big believer in the KISS principle. That means keep it simple, stupid. And I'm not saying the council's stupid, don't get me wrong. But we need to focus on the real problem, which is the emergency of the bridge falling apart. And to me, that's the simplest part of this. We need a sense of urgency here, and I'm not seeing that right now, and I think there's a smokescreen generated by the preferred alternative that's sort of smoking this to where you can't see what the reality is of this bridge falling apart. So I am in favor of a 3-lane bridge. Just want to make that clear, and I would hope that you can get your sense of urgency tonight, tomorrow, the next week or two, whatever it takes, and let's pursue the bridge and get it done, and then think about other things later on. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you, Terry. Mick Ireland, then Rachel Richards, and Petra Gregory. Is Mick still here? Okay. Rachel?
Good evening. I'm here today to urge the council to stop wasting time and begin the necessary National Environmental Policy Act processes, work you've been formally told twice by the federal agencies you will need to do to proceed, regardless of what alternative any of us think will work best. The council is not the decider. The deciders are the Federal Transportation Agency and the Colorado Department of Transportation, whose approvals are only granted after an independent, unbiased analysis of the benefits and drawbacks of all alternatives. Outcomes cannot be predetermined. So regardless of any ballot questions you may ask, NEPA will be required to move forward. Rejection of the preferred alternative design, should there be such a ballot question, will not equal approval of the 3-lane. And a vote to remove the Meralt from future highway considerations will not remove it from the planning process, because another vote can always be held reversing the prior. I do want to register a formal complaint about the city's deliberate lack of transparency and community outreach. Perhaps that was outsourced to the Friends of Meralt, but this is not just an issue about the entrance. This is about congestion throughout our entire town and our neighborhoods. It's very disappointing to not hear anybody talk about how many people trips cross the Castle Creek Bridge in buses as opposed to single occupant cars. And that this work should be focused on how do we reduce people trips in single occupant vehicle cars for the congestion of the downtown. There have been multiple public outreach meetings on the lumberyard and the Amory, and even a recent community survey I took did not ask one question about the entrance, transit, or congestion. So I look forward to an honest and open NEPA process. There have been no public meetings with the Commercial Core and Lodging Commission about what the entrance choices mean to them for congestion throughout the core. No presentations to the Golf Committee, although a huge number of mature trees, possibly hundreds, are going to have to be removed to widen the roundabout as you're planning. A T-box will need to be moved, and maybe a fairway relocated. No ask from the P&Z about the dramatic character changes this will cause. So, one last item. The cemetery lane on the newest plans is now designated in as a right-only and right-out intersection. So cemetery lane and McLean Flat lanes and all these people will have to take a right into town, into the roundabout at all hours to be able to go into town. So you're trading your immediate left lane in, but to make the 3-lane bridge flow, they're showing a right in and a right out only. If you want to go into town in the morning, you go through the school traffic in the roundabout every time. That's the way the new plan goes. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you. Petra Gregory, then Tony Kronberg, and John Barstow.
Hi, I'm Petra Gregory. I live on 10 Harbor Lane and possibly be one of the most affected people if you go for the 3-lane shifted. I also questioning that you hired Jacobs Engineering to come up with all these charts, and everything's very well done. They clearly come up with the conclusion that the preferred alternative is the best option. So I don't understand why this is even all still up for discussion, the 3-lane shifted. 3-lane shifted has no option for a bus lane going into town. You keep people in their cars, and also nothing for possibly future light rail. Also, if the bridge is supposedly falling down, which it isn't, you can come down there, look at it. I'm down there every day, I'm not worried about it. Why not go ahead and do the straight shot then? It seems like the fastest option to go. And I'm also agreeing with, there hasn't been a community outreach. So there was a great one with the preferred alternative, that's 1.5 years ago. We do need, a lot of my neighbors have no clue what's going on, or very limited. Well, thank you for letting me vent. Appreciate that.
I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I don't mind at all.
In our presentation last week, it was pointed out that a 3-lane shifted would move the bridge
south.
8 feet, 10 feet or something to the south, putting it more directly over the top of
Over
your
the
home.
house, yes, correct.
And I don't know the exact feet there. Do you currently, when there is snow plowing on the bridge and stuff, do you currently enjoy overflow coming off the bridge to your property?
We have had one beam in our house damaged and 2 windshields from the snowplow. So it's a concern if they come closer. And I don't want to give my house up for something that makes no sense. If we do have to move, and it's for something the town wants, and, okay, I won't like it, but I can deal with it a lot easier. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tony Kronberg and then John Barstow.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you very much for this opportunity to allow the public to speak. And as I said earlier to Tori, you really do know how to throw a good party. You had a lot of people attend. I appreciate that. So just a little background. 50 years ago, I served on the very first transportation committee that developed the Parkway entrance into Aspen. And ever since then, I have been steadfastly involved in many transportation projects that affect not only the city of Aspen, but all of our neighbors. I would like to ask the council tomorrow night, when you have your action item, you're going to give direction to staff. I think that you've heard from the public, and I being one of them. Tonight, there are more questions that have been asked than answers given. And I really do believe in all the years, one of the most important factors to reaching community consensus is to have a meet and greet or to have some type of public outreach where all of the options are put on the table and what all the intended and unintended consequences can be. I myself still don't have an answer to, okay, we're going to fix the bridge now. So is that a 3-lane bridge? Does that require EIS or a NAPA study? Or 2-lane bridge? Can we just go ahead and replace that? That's the overriding question right now, because if it's a 3-lane and it requires an environmental impact study, the supplemental, John Doyle's questions about the time frame. Then the second thing is, because of my background in emergency medicine and a lot of the organizations that I've worked with, that including the 4th of July parade, one of my jobs is to get people out of town following the plans that are in place. It's scary when you think that we only have 1 bridge and 3 lanes going out of town. I believe, this is my personal opinion, that we need 2 bridges, 2 lanes in, 2 lanes out, 2 S-curves. And then the last thing is that the Supreme Court case that was decided back in 2013, it's case number 08CA2552, Wagner versus Evans, that the judge in that case said that a vote is required whether we have full access to the buses going across Meroldt or the light rail. And I know that I heard the beep, that was 2 minutes, but with that particular court case, the city of Aspen is bound to have a vote on either the light rail or permanent buses. And I think that could be part of the action items. And while you have the fire person that's here, if you could ask him if he could come in and let us know where the shelter-in-place spots are, Bill, I think that'd be a real eye-opener to a lot of the people that it's gonna take 15 hours to get a turn.
Thanks,
Tell me,
Tony.
working the ambulance for 20 years, you don't want to
Thank
see,
you.
you want to burn, because that's
Thank you.
not a fun way to go. It hurts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
John Barstow. Thank you. Pam, Gable, are you still here? David Eggehart, where are you at, man? Come on up. Then Brendan Noakes would be next.
City Council, so I've been coming here a long time, since the mid-60s, and I just want you to think of the aesthetics of Aspen. You know, when I look from the golf course and see the paragliders come over the ridge and land down on the Meroldt Preserve, I almost think of a Georges Seurat painting, a point on this, the little beautiful dots of paragliders. I think that will go away. I think clearly this is not an easy decision. People are going to get hurt either way, so perhaps it's almost a triage. Which decision will hurt less people? But I do feel that all the discussion about traffic time is almost pointless because there's not a significant difference. Perhaps the emergency route and the evacuation needs to be considered, but I love the idea of just maintaining and repairing the bridge. I think one of the mistakes of the financial presentation when they had 135 million versus 143, that 140 some odd million to build the straight shot did not include the cost of repairing or improving the other bridge. So that clearly was an understatement of what it would cost. But I just feel, what do we want Aspen to be? When I ski Vail, I hate it. Why? I love the mountain, but I hate seeing the I-70. I think having a tunnel and a big highway just destroys the aesthetics of the town. And sometimes it's a little inconvenient to look good, right? I think Aspen, we want to look good. We want to keep that small town character and try not to hurt as many people. I don't think we need to improve the S-curve. Leave it the way it is and improve the bridge. We have to suffer with some commute times. Let's solve the problem of evacuation and keep the beautiful aesthetics of Aspen.
Thanks. Brendan? Oh, Pam, did you want to? Yep, thanks, Brendan.
Hi, my name is Pam Gable, and I live literally on the bridge. So, I mean, literally, I feel like my bedroom is on the bridge. So the big kaboom you hear every time a truck goes over, that's by my bedroom window. As that person, I do not feel the bridge can last another 8.5 or 10.5 years. I agree with what Rachel said about starting EIS statements and other processes just to get work done on the bridge. I am curious how many homes doing the 3-lane alternative will take out. I understand it would be a home under the bridge. I presume it would be our building and also some Aspen Villas homes. I haven't actually heard the details of how many homes either alternative would take out. I do feel that the straight shot would give us more evacuation routes. And after seeing Maui and some of the other fires in Colorado and in California, I think that's a really important consideration. But to begin with, I agree with other people who have said that time is of the essence. Just as someone who lives really on the bridge, it is alarming to me, and I don't think we have as much time, frankly, as some people think we do. Do you have any questions for me?
No, but I did want a clarification there. In our presentation the other night with the 3-lane shifted, I was asked by somebody else, what were the home impacts, not counting Harbor Lane, but does the right-of-way on a 3-lane shifted moving towards the south, what I saw in our materials was that there was 4 feet of right-of-way that might need to be acquired. Were there any impacts to actual homes or buildings on the south side of?
At this point, we don't see like house, but when you look at their properties a little bit, historically, when we've done work in that area, there becomes problems as far as the impact to foundational work and housing. So there is some of that we have included in that because we're anticipating that some of those structures will be impacted just through construction, just due to their age. So there is some costs included with that, but no take per se of the house.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Brendan, and then Bill Sterling, and then Kirk Gregory.
Guys, thanks for all your hard work. I'm Brendan Noakes. I've been an Aspen resident for about 5 years now. Always living right around the 8th Street bus stop. I live on 802 West Main Street right now. And just reiterating some of the points that a few other people have been making today. All the presentations and the slides and the numbers have been fantastic, but the precautionary principle of irreversible development and things that you can't go back on is really important to pay attention to. So my preference would be to rebuild the bridge, have 2 lanes or 3 lanes. There are much smarter people than me to decide on whether that's the case. I think this is a huge opportunity to re-engage how traffic is looked at coming into town. It's just that if there's another bridge or highway coming in through there, it's a significant place. You know, it's coming up close to that cabin that Fritz Benedict built back in the day. It's been a stronghold for many artists and residences. I'd like to see the same amount of money being put into the arts for, you know, musicians or artists painting that landscape that is untouched still to this day. But the Aspen slows people down. I mean, emergency aside, people come to Aspen to slow down. So, I mean, you know, you can't go back. We can chase out Starbucks, you can chase out McDonald's, but you can't reverse a bridge, you know. I think a light rail would be fantastic. I think bringing back the old plans to get the light rail back into Rio Grande could be interesting. But those are just my points.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bill Sterling, and then Aditya. Aditya?
had to leave.
Okay.
He saw the presentation at the city market, the downtown market on Saturday.
Great.
And he got very interested. He's 14, lives in New York, but he comes here a couple times a year. Wanted to speak to you all tonight, but he had another engagement.
We met him on Saturday. He was very engaging.
He's quite a kid. Thank you for having this opportunity for the public to be heard, and congratulations on trying to wrestle this to the ground. And as Tori made some comments before, I think you are on a good path, and you just have to really stay with it. The Castle Creek Bridge, it's got to be dealt with. If not now, when? That's just fundamental. And I think probably adding that lane to it would be a very, very superlative thing to do. Something that could be done in terms of the environmental issues that are involved here is the county and the city could work together administratively and make a major effort, no matter what happens in this decision, to deal with the worker vehicles coming to town every day. And it's a way that you could tag cars that are never allow again after January 1st, 2026, single worker vehicles coming in town. Environmentally, it's just a fundamental issue, and you all need to work together with the county, I think, and figure out ways to deal with that. Rachel made a little comment about that as well, too. So I think that one of the advantages of it taking so long is that one of the unique things about Aspen is that there's the North Star Preserve property when you come into town from Independence Pass, and there's the Merle property when you come in from the west into town too. And that speaks to the unique nature of our community. And thank God for the Merle family for their generosity in doing what they did and what Smith did with North Star many years ago. Evacuation is critical to kind of figure that out, but I think you need to move and take care of that bridge and make it either two lanes or add that third lane. So let's get on with it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming down. I've got Kirk Gregory and then Amory Lovins.
Hello. My name's Kirk Gregory. I live at 10 Harbor Lane.
So if you have any questions about the reality of living under a bridge, we've got some experience there. Just to add to what my wife said, it's interesting down there. We've had some experience with the cities, with the 2 windshields. The first 2 that got broken, the city paid for it. Third one, I had to sign a document that they won't pay for it, so we may have to revisit that a little bit. And yeah, we did have a beam break too in our bathroom that had to be fixed. What I wanted to say was, when my son was here a few weeks ago, he was looking at the letters and the ads and everything back and forth, and he said, this is really kind of a dumb way to make a decision by having 2 different groups. One group's got the DC lawyer, they've got a publicist, they're very well organized to their credit, and they have the right to do that. But it's not a way to make a decision. The way to make a decision is to listen to the people that know what the hell they're talking about. Okay, I'm a retired school teacher. I don't know much about bridges except living under one. I also wanted to talk a little bit about with Bill with bias. I have a bias too, but the difference is I've tried to admit it, you know, by where I live. I probably wouldn't be here if I lived up in Starwood. It'd be very unusual for a teacher to live up there, but, and speaking of that, I wanted to hit that real quick, the property values. We've never thought about that. It's not something my wife and I have never discussed selling our place. We never discussed, man, this place under a freaking bridge and look how much it's worth. We don't care about that. We like living there. And so that was also an understanding when we purchased the place that the bridge was above us and some days something was going to happen there. It was either going to be rehabilitated or something was going to happen, and the price we paid reflected that. So I would say that's the same on the other side with the property values. The people that got property over there, this is not anything new. So they knew that that was going to happen. The environment, people do kind of act like there is a real environment down there under the bridge. It's a riparian migration, bears and mountain lions, and you know, we get all pack rats, unfortunately. We just live trapped one. So there's a lot going on there. It's not just this wasteland underneath there. I also do find it's kind of ironic that the group that has been delaying doing anything about the entrance is all of a sudden very exuberant about the 3-lane shift. They're very excited about that. And I'll leave if you guys have any other questions for me and my perspective under the bridge. I'd be glad to answer them. No?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kirk.
Thank you. I'm concerned about the state of the bridge, and I do not have a recommendation for you, but maybe a useful idea or two. I'm a physicist and designer, not a civil or structural engineer. On the other hand, the past 4 years I've been adjunct professor in civil and environmental engineering at Stanford, and in a past career I started and led a couple of advanced composite companies, which will become relevant in a moment. Years ago, I served on a couple of Defense Science Board task forces, and we kept seeing slides of drop-in temporary carbon fiber bridges that would be deposited by a heavy lift helicopter onto abutments or other fixtures, bolted in place, and in hours to a day, they were carrying Abram tanks and a bunch of other very heavy stuff. That technology is quite mature for temporary bridges carrying 70 to 110 tons with spans up to 40 meters. But the technology and materials are good for a lot more than that, for permanent structures, and they don't fatigue materially, they don't corrode, important with road salt. They can last upwards of 100 years, they have very low maintenance. And the technology is moving a lot faster than the conservative civil engineering culture. Now, accelerated, let me just give you an example. My friend Mike Schleich, one of the world's top structural engineers, just put up in Stuttgart a 124-meter bridge, every one of whose hangars is pure carbon fiber composite with a quarter of the cross-section of the steel, greater strength, better properties, and cheaper. Now, accelerated bridge replacement is great. It works well as in Glenwood with conventional materials, but the new materials, including fiber reinforced concrete, can greatly expand the toolbox. And there are programs on this in the federal government, including the military, a lot of states, a lot of universities. And I would love to meet with the Jacobs engineers to get a better sense of their research depth there. Finally, I'd listened carefully to your good question, Mr. Mayor, about carbon fiber spans, and I heard two things. First, that this particular site is not a good candidate for a drop-in that would avoid enormous amounts of delay and hassle. I would like to see that analysis so I understand better what's not good about it and do I see any workarounds. Second, I heard that CDOT is slow to innovate. Wednesday morning, I'll be having a call at the instance of the director of CDOT with her top engineers, and we'll see if there is room for some faster innovation and leadership there. I would not give up on them. It's a terrific opportunity given how urgent the need is. Thank you.
Thank you, Amory.
Thanks, Amory.
All right. That is our list of public input this evening. I want to thank you guys all for coming out. Oh.
One more. No?
Were you in the room when I said not to go out and sign up in order to have the last word?
No, I like Amory's last word. Let's go.
Okay, all right. Thank you. And Karen, you're always welcome to send us an email.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. With that, hey, real quick, before you guys all leave out of here, I had one question I wanted to ask the entire group. Of the folks that are in this room right now, how many of you were supportive or are supportive of the concept of light rail in our valley? Thank you. Okay, I want to bring it back to council table. We need to have a little discussion around what you've heard this evening, how we want to proceed. Like I said, any direction or next steps really should be discussed and given forth tomorrow's action item, agenda item. So I'm going to start with Ward. Ward, do you have any question?
Request a 2-minute bathroom break.
What's that?
Can I request a 2-minute bathroom break before we discuss?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We need a quick bio break, Ward. Hold on to that. We'll be back in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, something like that. We're going to take just a quick break. Thank you very much. All right. So again, right now, what we want to do is just have a little conversation amongst council members. Perhaps we could share a little bit of input and insight into what you're thinking, what questions you need to have answers still to. And perhaps if there sit before us 3 alternatives at this point, perhaps we can eliminate one and move forward with some more information. So with that, I would open it up first to Ward. Because you're remote, Ward, I want to just give you an opportunity to share any questions, comments, suggestions, or input that you have if you're there with us now.
Yeah, I'll try with the video. My connection has come in and out. If I have difficulty, I'll turn the video off again. You know, this is obviously a question that is the future of Aspen depends on it. And it's not a silver bullet, no matter what solution is chosen. It's not a silver bullet for traffic. The commute times don't really change that much. I believe that the safety aspect of it can have a big delta. I supported all the studies for the S-curves because I thought it was important to ascertain if 4 lanes could go through the S-curves, because I feel that the 4 lanes are needed. And the community can debate this as much as they want, but I want to try to put this out for the public that don't judge people by what their opinions are, and that it's people are speaking from their hearts. They're speaking from their own self-interest to where they live. They're speaking about rural open space. All of these are valid concerns. How much it's going to cost, like Sam says, who really knows until you build it all. Having been on council for quite a few years, I know that nothing comes in as what is expected. It's always more. Oftentimes it takes more time, but one of the central questions that needs to be addressed is that CDOT says we don't need a vote. Our city attorney has advised that we probably need to have a vote because some land that was purchased or conveyed and Thomas Merle property has been used. It was purchased, some of it was purchased with transportation funds as a transportation corridor. It has been used for open space, and it's the opinion of our city attorney that in order to use it for the preferred alternative and modified direct shot, that we would need to have a public vote. You know, this is something that the council is going to have to decide, but for the community, oftentimes I've asked people that have emailed in support of the S-curves that do you think we should have a public vote, or should 3 people on city council make a decision for the future of Aspen? Rarely do I get a reply from that. I've asked, and I ask again, that if this does go to a public vote and that the vote is contrary to what either S-curves or preferred alternative, that the prevailing side would go forward. But I'm asking the people of Aspen to accept what the citizens have decided. Threatened lawsuits don't really sit well with me. City gets sued all the time, but to hold up what is admittedly a precarious situation with the existing Castle Creek Bridge that it needs to be replaced, and we hire experts to come in and give us recommendations. We based upon their decisions, based upon their experience as experts in the field, and then if we don't get the answer we're looking for, we question every conclusion. I think that's probably human nature. But I've also heard it opined that and then I think Tony mentioned this about the Evans-Ogner case, that it was, I think, determined that it was an administrative decision and not subject to an initiative. So I just ask the community to accept, if we do go to a community vote, that you accept what your members of your community have decided. I will, if the S-curves and 3-lane are chosen by the community, I will stand by that. I don't think it's the best solution for Aspen, but I think that self-determination and democracy gives us, I think I have a duty to do what I think is best for Aspen, and that's not a 3-lane entrance, but I will abide by the decision of the people if we do go to a vote. So I know that if we do public outreach, it's going to extend how long it's going to take to get anywhere. I know we had quite a bit of public outreach, and a lot of the people that have expressed opinions about that public outreach say that it was more of a sell job for the preferred alternative, and an education piece on what the preferred alternative was. And if we have more public outreach, what are we going to ask? What are we going to do? What do we ask that we don't have answers to already? We're never, it's not a silver bullet. We're never going to get the community 60% behind either entrance scenarios that have been presented here. I think if the S-curves came back with an ability to do 4 lanes, I don't think we'd be having these huge discussions now. But as we go forward, I just ask the community to commit to the decision of the voters, and to also not judge people by what their opinion is, to respect each other, regardless of what political opinions and positions that they had. That we need more of that in this country. We need it globally, we need it locally, and we need to respect each other. Thank you.
Thanks. Ward, of the 3 alternatives, preferred alternative as proposed, split shot iteration, and the 3-lane solution, is there one of those 3 that you do not support? Do you have a preference for 2 of those 3?
Well, yeah, most of the people in the room aren't going to like this, but I think the 3-lane is not something I can support. I think both the split shot and the preferred alternative give us better emergency egress and a higher score by Jacobs.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, Sam?
Is it okay if I go?
Sure.
We would not be having this discussion if the current Castle Creek Bridge was not failing. Weight restrictions would be a disaster, and a more significant failure would be catastrophic. This conversation is not happening right now because of traffic or the need for better public transportation, or even because of wildfire evacuation, even if those are of grave concern. They are being used to push forward a flawed alternative that was rejected, albeit narrowly, the last time it was voted on. Public transportation is the only thing that has been studied and shown to have improvements, which I desire, but for the preferred alternative. But I also have talked to many supporters of the preferred alternative that believe this is a traffic solution, which it's not. When I ask them if they'll be now taking the bus, they have always replied no to me, thus creating a further issue. Wildfire evacuation and a second bridge for the health and safety of our town might be needed at some point. In between that, public transit and the desire to improve traffic flow, a second bridge through this corridor might be needed someday. But not like this, not forced through manipulation and coercion, as our current bridge nears the end of its useful life, not under duress. This bridge must be replaced, and replacing it with anything less than 3 lanes would be a waste of time and money. The 3-lane shifted keeps 2 lanes open of traffic during the bridge's construction. While this is taking place, I would support the community looking toward what logical and palatable bridge might look like through the preferred alternative corridor. One that actually solves these problems, like preventing a new traffic light on 7th and Main Street, and would back traffic that would end up backing traffic up around original curve, and as the valued residents of Cemetery Lane have come into town to go out of town to places like great importance, like the school and hospital. I believe a modified version of the split shot could accomplish this one day, where traffic flows one way out of town and one way into town on a potential new bridge. This configuration could have a turnaround spot prior to the roundabout to prevent overuse of the roundabout, and to prevent a stoplight on 7th and Main, in addition to Cemetery Lane users not being able to turn right on the Highway 82. They say don't let perfect be the enemy of good, but the preferred alternative is barely good for anything other than public transit, and this community deserves as close to perfect as possible, and not a slap-together proposal that people feel pressured to enact upon only because of the leaders of the past refused to do anything until our current bridge was on its last legs. Even the voters of 1998, when I was 4 years old, only approved a 2-lane bridge with a light rail corridor, not this behemoth that is being put forward now. To clarify previous statements where I called the Merle open space sacred, living in Aspen, I believe that all green space in Aspen is sacred in the sense that it would be a crying shame to pave paradise and put up a parking lot, in this case a 4-lane highway, without being as close to perfect as possible and absolutely needed. I care deeply about Aspen's community character, and living here is a sacrifice for most of us we all make because of the immense natural beauty and outdoor recreation that helps to negate how difficult and costly it can be to live here in this paradise. I recognize the potential need to use this space for reasons I stated previously, but once again, if you're going to pave over a beautiful field of open space, you better have close to a perfect design as possible. I truly believe this can be accomplished when we are not under pressure of a current failing bridge. I support the 3-lane shift at this time, knowing it's not perfect, but it is the best option we currently have. I'd also be remiss not to mention Kirk and Petra Gregory and my deep empathy toward their situation at 10 Harbor Lane, and my desire to work with them as best as possible if the 3 lanes shifted is the will of the council. There is much information to this issue, and I could go on and on, but those are my main points and thought process to simply explain that the bridge needs to be replaced as soon as possible, and that the preferred alternative is so deeply flawed that it needs to be perfect if and when it is ever implemented. The issue has been the worst City of Aspen issue I've had to deal with during my albeit short tenure on council. The emotions are high, and the idea that if someone disagrees with you, that makes them an idiot and or evil. I'm sick of this rhetoric and want to recognize that if you prefer the preferred alternative, I understand, and I do not think you are an idiot or evil, but just someone with a different good faith opinion. If the will of this council is to move towards the preferred alternative now, I believe it is in the community's best interest to put it to a vote this November with language similar to the 2002 vote. I truly ask this community to recognize how much each individual council member cares and how difficult a decision this is. Please choose dignity over disrespect and cruel behavior. Please work with us for an issue that never should have gotten to this point. To my fellow city council members, let's not kick the can down the road any further. Let's move towards a concrete solution of this critical Aspen defining issue.
So you're, of the 3, what I heard in your comments there was a preference for the 3-lane shifted, potential for a future split shot, but third out of 3 for you would be the preferred alternative as proposed.
Third being last place, being I don't support it, yes.
Correct. Cool. Thank you. John, if you'd like.
Sure. As an elected official / public servant, we are supposed to think long-term. Aspen matters very much to me. I've lived here 44 years now, and I've seen it go through some dramatic changes already. We're still dealing with the same 2-lane bridge that was here when I first moved to town, and it is failing. Now, talking about our different options tonight, it's been pointed out that the preferred alternative does not significantly improve traffic. I don't think we're ever going to get to the bottom of our traffic woes here. The traffic is not an issue just in Aspen. It's up and down the valley. But the preferred alternative or the split shot would both help with public transit, which is lacking right now because of having to share the 2-lane bridge with single occupancy vehicles, as well as the much talked about evacuation routes tonight. There are 4 things that are important to me in this bridge discussion, and this is in no particular order. But the impacts to businesses and residents over a 4-year construction timeline for the 3-lane bridge, I don't know if that's going to be good for business or residents. Again, the second reason is we want public transit to function better or properly. The goal is to try and get people out of their cars, and the way to do that is to give them choices. One choice is also getting people on their bicycles, and one of the options with replacing the Castle Creek Bridge where it is eliminates bicycle traffic. They would have to be rerouted up to the Marolt, and that's going to put more bike riders back in their cars. So with that being said, the last of my 4 points is, and this has been stated numerous times tonight, we need to replace this bridge as soon as we can. And the best way to do that is with the plan that's already in place, the preferred alternative. Am I advocating for the preferred alternative? No, but I am going to advocate for another bridge so that we can have better public transit, better evacuation routes, and we can use the new bridge while we replace the old one so that nobody's impacted by the replacement. The last thing I want to say is the split shot. I think there's an opportunity, I don't think this was examined during the 43 different options that were looked at during the original record of decision. I don't believe a slipstream lane from Cemetery Lane was ever considered. So I would like to put this forward, looking at a split shot with a slip lane component for Cemetery Lane. Thank you.
All right. So in your rank choicing here of, as final solution, a 3-lane solution is not your primary. You would keep discussions on the preferred alternative and a split shot as your top 2.
Correct, thank you.
All right, thank you. Bill, input? And if you have, requests for more information, or if there's other things that haven't been touched on that you see fit, those as well.
Thank you. We'll see if me as a fool in Ward's words can come up with any intelligent comments here. Thanks again for that, Ward. Very kind of you. Firstly, John, could either you or staff clarify the comment that you made about the bicycle lane not existing on the 3-lane shifted? Because that's not my understanding.
My recollection of reading the packet is in order to facilitate a bike lane on one of the 2 3-lane bridge operations, in order to not buy the right-of-way that would impact the homes below, I believe we'd be left with no bike lane on the bridge. Is that correct, Pete?
We do include the bike ped. We've got to, because it's already we went through a series of rules of why there would need to be a component of bike ped on that bridge.
Okay, maybe I'm confused. There was one component where we would have to build a separate bike bridge.
Is there a separate?
I think that was just asked about. I don't think anyone ever said it was. Yeah.
It was just a consideration. There were a number of elements that Jacobs went through looking at the pedestrian component on the bridge. So that may be where that information is coming from. But there were multiple things that were considered. But ultimately, the recommendation was that there needs to be a sidewalk on the bridge.
But the sidewalk that was left in one of those bridges was only 5 feet wide, as I recall.
They should be matching the existing condition of, I believe it's 7.5 to 8 feet. Typically, you'd have a 10-foot, but because of the width, we have it narrowed down a little bit.
Okay, I apparently misunderstood that information, but I still believe we need more options for people to get in and out of town, and we need to enhance public transit.
Thanks for clarifying that. Thanks, John. And thanks to the whole team. Again, this is a very difficult decision for us, difficult decision for the community. You've done an exceptional job presenting information to us. I know there's a lot of art to it. It's not a perfect science. So thank you for doing your best to provide that as much clarity as you can to us. Kirk Gregory mentioned earlier tonight that I am biased, and it's true, I am biased, but so are we all. This is something that affects every single one of us almost on a daily basis, if not multiple times a day. I'm biased with my love for Aspen and my love for the conditions that surround my house and my community. I absolutely am biased and have never denied that. And I challenge you to find someone who isn't biased in this conversation. So that's not something I have an issue admitting at all, and I'm proud to admit it. I am biased, and I care deeply about this decision in our community. And I'd be glad to make personal sacrifice if there was something that was proven to improve upon our situation significantly, but I don't think that the preferred alternative is that. I don't like that this conversation has become framed about the preferred alternative versus something else. I don't think that's where we're at. We're facing a critical juncture where we have to make a decision about replacing a bridge that could fail and cut off our community almost entirely. It's not about values. It's not about NIMBYism. It's not about my personal preferences or anyone else's. We've got something that needs to be triaged and triaged now, and one of the speakers tonight, I think, summed that up beautifully. It's like we've got to deal with the most emergent situation today, and then the analysis of what might need to be done later can come later. But this shouldn't be an either or. It should be, what do we need to do to be responsible leaders of this community? And to me, that's addressing the failing bridge now. I found it very interesting tonight that in option 5 of Jacob's presentations of the traffic modeling, which is maintaining a 2-lane bridge, improving the S-curves, and eliminating a relatively small section of a bus lane down valley of the roundabout, that score was almost identical to the preferred alternative score at a significantly lower cost and impact to the community. I think we need to focus on rebuilding this bridge now, improving the bridge now, improving traffic flow, and if we don't do that, this community could suffer irreparably and drastically. We don't have the luxury of time here. It's likely by the time we sort through anything on the preferred alternative, this bridge will be in a desperate state, and we will be remembered as the council that did not act when necessary. I'm not willing to take that gamble, and so I am focused exclusively at this point on fixing the bridge. An analysis of different entrances to Aspen can come later, in my opinion. My last point is that Pete introduced this subject tonight about talking about getting people out of their cars and prioritizing transit. And this community has done an incredible job of that. But I think that we've reached the saturation point. RAFTA has grown exponentially. It's serving our community well. I don't think that there's much more room there to convince people to get out of their cars. I don't think that should be a driving force of decision here. I think it's frankly kind of delusional to think that we can meaningfully increase the number of people that are commuting in cars onto buses now. I think we've reached the critical mass, the saturation point there. So to be perfectly clear, I want to focus exclusively on replacement and enhancement of the bridge and enhancement of traffic flow. I'm not at all interested in the preferred alternative or the split shot at this time. Thanks.
Okay, but it would be helpful for us as we move forward if you could share the ranking there of your choice. Obviously, fix the bridge, 3 lanes shifted or 2. I guess you're kind of leaving that open to more information. Split shot in the future, preferred alternative, et cetera. It would be helpful to us going forward if you could rank choice those.
Perfectly clear. Number 1, strong number 1 is replacement of the bridge, restoration of the bridge, and focus on improvement of traffic flow through the whole Highway 82 corridor.
Yep.
Brush Creek and up, Intercept Lot and up. Number 9 and 10 are split shot and preferred alternative.
Okay. All right. All right, thank you for that. So, I think that this council all agrees that, we are concerned about the bridge, that is a priority. I don't think that we have got consensus about what the 3 lanes versus 2 lanes entails. My request would be for more information around that. I am interested in the 3-lane for impacts to Harbor Lane and what can be mitigated for that. I'm interested in it about the right-of-way takings that needed to happen. And, you know, we've seen so many models, so many drawings about this. I just need them straightened out and cleared up. For example, in one iteration, I believe, of the 3-lane bridge, there is the accommodation of 4 lanes through the S curves, a dedicated bus lane perhaps on both sides. I want more information about that because I'm not sure that that's necessary. I don't know that the south side of Highway 82 dedicated bus lane is necessary through the S curves. So for me, I need more information about the 3 lanes versus 2 lanes, but I agree that the priority is on fixing the bridge that we have currently, fixing or replacing. But along with that, again, I don't have enough detail about what does it really mean if we were to replace it with a 2-lane bridge. We've heard talk about a temporary bridge being built, using power plant as that acts. I just don't know enough about it. But I do agree that fixing the Castle Creek and replacing the Castle Creek Bridge is of paramount importance. Secondly, I could take the preferred alternative as it has been proposed to us recently out of my preferred alternative list. So for me, I am looking at solutions for the current existing bridge, and then I would be interested in exploring further split shot opportunities. And I say that in the sense that what you have up here is a very divided council, but we have commonality here. And the commonality that I am hearing is that there is support for fixing the bridge that we have in some manner, and that is a priority. We don't see a long timeline on that, or we don't wish to see a long timeline on that. Secondly, I have not heard majority support for the preferred alternative as it is proposed. I have heard of the split shot as an alternative or a second choice to both of those. So for me, I'm suggesting that going forward, we may focus more on 3-lane or 2-lane solutions to the existing alignment, along with a modified preferred alternative, otherwise known as a split shot. I want to just pass this down. This is actually from 2008, but is a split shot rendering that has just 2 lanes coming across not across the Marolta, as a matter of fact, side skirting the Marolta with a modified direct, as it was called. This actually comes out of a roundabout at Cemetery Lane. I'm not into those details about this. I just need more information. But what I can tell you is that from my seat, I do not have support going forward for the preferred alternative as it has been exhibited to me. What that means is 2 bus lanes, 2 traffic lanes, 2 shoulders, and a transit corridor. I think it also represented a median perhaps, but I don't know. But I'm just not up for that. I don't agree with a tunnel. I don't agree with 4 or 5 lanes of traffic coming into the end of Main Street. But I am interested in the other 2 options that have been listed for us. I think we need more information. If we are looking at doing a bridge replacement or repair, I think we need more information about the impacts of both a 3-lane bridge there, as well as construction timing and what is necessary to build 2 or 3 lanes there. On the other, I think that we need more information around split shot alignment. As well as in this depiction, there is no light at Cemetery at 7th. I'm just interested in some more about this information. I also think that by limiting the platform and the width coming into Main Street, if we were to go that way, it can actually have minimal impacts on the Burger Cabin itself. There is opportunity for perhaps even still access where it currently sits. But I don't know, because all I have is 11 by 14 kind of renderings. Anyway, so going forward, I suggest that coming out of this meeting that we start focusing more energy and get more information back about 3 lanes or 2 lanes on the existing alignment, and we continue to get more information about what a split shot would be, or look like, or could look like. I think that that then leads into the questions about timing with EISs and NEPA processes, and we need more information about what it takes to get this done in all those scenarios. John?
I had a quick question for Sarah or staff. When this is brought back to us, did we do, was there a cost estimate of all the right-of-way acquisitions we would need to go with a 3-lane bridge?
Yes.
To clarify, they're estimates. You need to get into a level of design that you have not authorized for us to be more concrete about those impacts and the estimated value of those impacts. So right now, it's, the roughest estimates possible. There's nothing we can hang our hat on, in my opinion, until we are further along in design.
Thanks.
And that's kind of what I'm asking for, is a little bit more refinement of that. What did I see? South side of Highway 82, 4 feet of acquired right-of-way, $6 million in a price tag. Of course, who knows? But beyond that, what we heard from some of the residents there were that the impacts and the proximity to some of their residents could cost us even more, both monetarily as well as we'll see if there was even necessary for takings, or however you want to call it. So we need more information about that. I'm interested in some mitigation or some solutions around the Gregory House down on Harbor Lane. This is not the first place that housing has been underneath a bridge. I'm sure that there are some sorts of collection or funneling of materials that are pushed over a bridge in situations like this. I'm interested in that. I want to know. I'm really not interested in unhousing anybody. That is not something that I look forward to. So I'm looking for more information about that existing alignment improvements, and I'm looking for more information about split shot alignment.
So for clarity, we're not going to take direction from any of this evening. We're going to want to see that in a motion tomorrow. And so please come prepared with what your components of a motion are. It'd be best if you've written some of that out ahead of time, and we're able to see the council massage that at the table. Because right now I have one of you making an information request. We're not going to act on that because it has an appropriations need to it without 3 of you telling us that's what you want us to do. I will say the second thing is you need to be thinking about, if you're asking for information, more information, how much are you willing to spend to get it? That will be something else I will need in a motion, is I will need some expenditure authority so that I can scope to your budget limit.
Excellent. Thank you. So we will have that tomorrow. We have it scheduled as an action item, and we'll carry this forward.
I'll wait till then. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, John. Ward, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening tonight. We will see you tomorrow. Thank you, as always, to GrassRoots, and especially to all of you that came out. Thank you to the citizens that came out and participated, and very well done and respectful. So thank you all very much.
Thank you all.